In the last video, we talked about depression and using self-compassion with depression, particularly that initial stage of trying to get out of bed. If we're really depressed, then we're struggling with that. And it could be applied throughout the day in similar ways when the depression is making us have the urge to withdraw and to isolate. Now looking at anxiety, and using this practice with anxiety is much the same. So the two-step process of mindful awareness, notice and name the difficult emotional feelings, the difficult thoughts, and then the self-compassion, self-talk and behaviors. The thing we need to watch with anxiety is that anxiety will often get us to do reassurance compulsion. So we try and reassure ourselves. So we reassure ourselves that the terrible thing won't happen, or we get other people to reassure ourselves. So we have these worries and we check them with other people, or we check in other ways. We Google and look online. So there can be lots of ways we try and get mental reassurance. And it can even be just we talk to ourselves in our head. We get this worry, this anxiety come up, and then we talk back to it and say, no, it won't happen because of X, Y, and Z. So we don't want to use self-compassion as a reassurance thing, and that's why the self-talk is about acceptance, about validation, and about action, so motivation and what we want to do, and moving through something, not getting rid of it, not trying to solve the uncertainty, not trying to say everything will be okay and the terrible thing won't happen. Instead, we're going, okay, this is difficult, this is a tricky emotion to handle. I can move through this, I can choose my next steps, my next action, and keep our focus on the action. So that's the slight tweak to watch with anxiety, is that we're not starting to use self-compassion to reassure ourselves. And that, will be the same for all the anxiety disorders. For obsessive compulsive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, they will have a lot of these mental compulsions. And, in some ways it's the same with depression. There can often be these mental compulsions and ruminations with depression as well. So making sure the self-talk's about acceptance, validation, support, motivation, and instruction, and getting us to engage in our life rather than get stuck in our heads and avoiding doing things and falling back into emotional coping strategies. And looking at anxiety from the frame of when we're going into something that makes us anxious. So anxiety often will be at its peak just before we do the difficult thing. And that's the real tricky thing with anxiety, is it tricks us. It makes us think it's going to be unbearable to do the challenging activity, but actually it's the earlier part that's, for me anyway, is the most difficult often with anxiety, and with people I work with we'll often talk about this. That initial anxiety is peaking much higher than once we get going with whatever it is. So we want to have a tool to support us so that we don't follow anxiety and avoid doing the meaningful pursuits, because if we keep doing that, depression will often follow on its heels. So let's say we're going to do a activity which has a lot of social engagement, so people often have anxiety socially. It could be workplace, it could be in your social personal life. So you're going to an event with lots of people, you're going to have to talk, engage, maybe you present, or maybe you have to talk to different people. That can be a common one for many of us. And so you are either early stage, depending on how severe your anxiety is, it might start days before, but let's imagine it's starting an hour or so before, and you're starting to get a lot of anxious body sensations. So we talked in previous videos that some people will have more thoughts, some people will have more feelings, and it'll often be a blend of those. And so you might be approaching that event with a lot of catastrophizing thoughts, so thoughts that it's going to go wrong, you're going to say the wrong thing, you're going to mess up, people won't like me, all this worry. So it's our brain cleverly trying to control all the uncertainty and get us to withdraw, avoid, so that we don't risk doing this. And we also might have a lot of physical symptoms of anxiety. So often we have this down the midline of our body, so we might have sensations in the face. Often the jaw is tense for many people. It might be headaches, might be tension in the temples and other areas, the neck, the throat. So all of this area can be bracing to protect us. Our shoulders can be very tight. We might be shaky. Down the rest of the middle of the body, there might be tension and tightness in the chest. Heart might be pounding or palpitating. For some people, the breathing will be very tight and constricted. For others, it might be rapid and shallow. And also there could be all kinds of butterflies and difficult gnawing sensations in the stomach. We might have urgency to go to the bathroom. We might have other sensations in our limbs, so we might be shaking, we might be feeling quite weak and like we're going to collapse. There could be many other symptoms. So these are often called somatic markers. So if you look at Antonio Damasio's work on the neuroscience of emotion, we have these somatic markers and they can be very personal. So people will have different ones. But generally they're a strong sensation that has a tone of unpleasantness. We don't want it, we want to avoid it, we want to move away from it rather than go towards it. And they can be all over the body. And so we've got all of that going on, and of course it then becomes very difficult to concentrate and to engage, and we feel like we want to avoid it. And often if we have strong anxiety, we will avoid things. And that's part of anxiety. So self-compassion would be being kind about that and then recommitting and trying again. So we use mindfulness to notice all of that. We notice what's going on in the body. I like the method where you scan through the body, you find all of the different difficult sensations, or the main key ones, spend a little time with each one, making space, breathing, allowing it to be there. And then you get a sense of the whole body with these feelings in, making space for all of it. We can use, I like Russ Harris's protocol called NAME, which is notice, acknowledge, so we name it. M for make space, and E for expansive awareness. So we hold the awareness of the difficult sensations, but also expand to what we're doing and where we are. So we can do that, and we'll look at acceptance more specifically and how to work with body sensations. We can also just go for the most difficult sensation, the one that's strongest, try and build some acceptance with that. Then we go for the thoughts, and we can notice a name, we can label those. And this sounds like a long process as I describe it, but if you practice it, it can be done in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, enough to just unhook a little bit. And then we bring in the self-compassion. So we go, okay, this is difficult. I am feeling anxious here, but this is courage. This is bravery, is facing this and still going to do the difficult thing. I can be as focused as I can. I don't have to get this perfect. I'll do the best I can. Many people do love, like, and support me. So even if these people don't, that's okay. I can bear that. I can survive that. So I'm going to do the best I can, and we'll see how it goes. So we keep this self-talk going, which is accepting and validating, motivating, instructional, any of those qualities that we feel. We can even just get one phrase, like, I can do this, and just have that in our mind now and again, saying it, breathing, feeling it in the heart area. And so we run that through, and then we take action. We go to the event, and we, as best we can, try to accept and notice the distress, but keep our focus on the people, on what we're doing, keep the self-compassion going, keep that supportive inner talk, and thinking about what is best for us when we're at this difficult event. What will support us? What do we care about? What are our values? What do we want to manifest and give in this scenario? And that's all we can do. We can't control what people will think. We can't control how something will go. We can just do the best we can, and then leave it up to time passing to see what happens. And so we might have to do that quite a bit. So if you're talking to someone, you do it very quickly in your mind. You're talking to someone, you're focusing on them, the anxiety comes quite strong and distracts you from listening. You notice a name, bring in some self-talk, and then re-engage back with the person. And it can be done really quickly when we've practiced it. So it's not distracting you from concentrating, focusing, and being with people. In fact, anxiety and all those worry thoughts, all those difficulties are the things that will distract you. This tool, you just do it quickly in the moment and then focus back. And then focus back. Again, like we said in other videos, when your level of distress is really high, when the anxiety is in a very acute and difficult phase, you have to do this technique over and over again. And then as you come down and it's not so strong, you don't have to do it so much. You can be more just present, engaged in your life. And sometimes you have to do it at that early stage, as we were saying earlier, so that half an hour before you do the difficult thing, and then you find you get there and actually you're having fun, you're getting engaged, you're enjoying the nibbles and the drinks and whatever it is, and you're losing yourself in it, and you're feeling good. So it might be that you have to do this more in preparation. And if you look at any athletes, they do things like this. So they use their breathing, they use their self-talk, they get themselves fired up and motivated and ready, and they have a lot of anxiety in that pre-performance stage. And what we know from research is actually that anxiety won't damage performance unless it takes our focus off the task. So anxiety can actually give us energy, it can motivate, it can give us energy to engage and be motivated to connect and perform well. And actually it's only when it becomes that it grabs our focus and pulls our focus away from the task that anxiety will damage our performance or something. And so we can control that attention, we can do stuff with that. So yeah, we can control our attention in that state. So even when we're highly anxious, even when we're feeling these strong body sensations and difficult thoughts, we still have control over our attention, our behavior, this self-compassion that we can bring in. And even if our mind is very blank and we can't even think clearly, then we pay attention to something that is supportive and kind. So we look around the room, we look for people who are kind and supportive. We look at the space, we see that we are safe, that we're not in the danger that the anxiety is conveying to us. And so at the very least, we use that as an anchor to put our attention onto something supportive. And actually, self-compassion, it engages the oxytocin system in our hormonal system. And we know that oxytocin is one of the best hormones to lower the stress response. So if we can build this skill and practice, it will be very supportive in those stressful times. And so, you know, we can build up gradually. We don't have to do it all in one go. We can set a hierarchy of gradually going to these things that make us anxious, gradually talking more, or gradually presenting, or doing whatever it is that's difficult. And all the time we can use self-compassion to support us. So the next video will have a little look at some other options, or other tools we can bring in.